community live chat discussion. Today's discussion is going to be on mental wellness and how trauma shows up in adulthood. I am joined today by two amazing counselors and therapists. I am Jacqueline Stevenson, the Director of Counselors in the Community Association, and I will allow them to introduce themselves.
Okay, I'm Terry Jeter. I'm a marriage and family therapist by profession, but I also advocate for healthy relationships in the community as well. And they're called cocktails and conversation. And I hold them in social settings because I know, like we talked before, even though we have African American people of color coming to therapy, however, we still need more people to come out. So sometimes they're kind of afraid of therapy. I don't need therapy. They'll say things like, "I don't need therapy. What can therapy do for me?" And so I try to tell them it's not about what we could do for you. It's not necessary. You have to have a problem. Sometimes you just need some little tools or you need some skill set. So I think going to them, doing it in a social setting, doing what we call psychoeducation, and that's what I have to tell them. It's more psychoeducation and it's a tiny bit of therapy. Of course, you have to have a little bit of that in there because if you're facilitating these type of events, you have to be able to watch people's emotions and see where they are. So that's one of the things that I do to make sure. And I think that's how I'm different from a lot of other people who go out there and they hold these social gatherings in a sense, is that you have to be kind of have a trained eye to see what's going on with people. As we know, as clinicians, we know that it's an art to do therapy, so you still have to watch people's, the whole environment, the people, their movement and different things. So I like to go to them and help them understand how we can get them to come into therapy without them being scared, like either they're crazy or they don't need it because they don't have a problem. And it's not always about a problem. It could be also about something positive, going to the next level. If you need someone you could talk to help you get there, we do that as well.
All right. So my name is Chasity Chandler. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I am a relationship and sex therapist by specialty. I also specialize in working with the LGBTQ plus population, and I am a therapist for therapists. I'm also EMDR trained. I'm also, as it says on the screen, the founder of the National Institute for Sexual Health and Wellness, which is the first sexual sexual education institute in the world that is geared towards the BIPOC community. So that's me. Not sure where she went.
I know, right?
I'd also add that, one of my mottos is that your mental health and your sexual health are just as important as your physical health. A lot of what I see in our communities as it relates to therapy is based and rooted in trauma and negative experiences around sex, sexuality, and gender. So that's my realm.
I think the same thing. I agree
Yeah.
because I have a lot of
Awesome.
teenagers. Uh,
No, I'm so sorry.
no,
The
we were just
internet let
talking.
me.
We didn't know where you went for a minute. We didn't want to have dead
Yeah.
air. So
I
I'm
just
so
shared one of
thankful
my
that
infamous quotes. That's all.
look. I'm happy that I'm with some leaders that know how to make it happen. That's the Beyonce move right there. Keep the show going, right? So
Mhm.
one of the things that we wanted to really go into with this discussion is the impact trauma is really hitting our communities hard, from local violence and family conflict to social media and mental wellness. Like, we're praising self-care and we're you know focusing on that self-care component, yet our suicide and overdose deaths are rates are high, you know so they're steady rising. Where is the disconnect? So based on what you've seen, and your mental health practice, Chastity, with working with different individuals for so long, where do you see that disconnect is when, a person has the ambition for that self-care, but it's a struggle still?
Well, some of it is just we talk about self-care just like we talk about self-love, but when you really think about it in our communities, it's not something that we teach or have been taught, right? Like, so we
Mhm.
talk about self-care, but we watched our mom or our grandma or whomever work themselves into the ground, right, to make sure that everybody else was okay. And we kind of
Mhm.
pass that along from
Mhm.
generation to generation, that in order to be a great parent, right, and in order to be the best parent that you can be, you have to put all your focus and energy and time and effort into your family, not necessarily on self. Like, we watch generation after generation after generation not have good self-care, not take care of themselves mentally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, so spiritually. It could go on and on and on, right? But we watch that happen, and that's what we take on, and that's what we think it means to be a good parent or a good mom or a good role model, right? To run yourselves in the ground and to not take care of yourself. So
You
instead of
know,
preaching self-care, I think we got to start uh, explaining what self-care is, because it's more than getting your nails and your hair done, right?
exactly. Exactly. You know, Chastity, I think that not think, I know that you're right about that, because a lot of times, as a marriage and family therapist, right, when you see the whole family, we look at the whole picture, right? A lot of times, when they bring their children into us, right, they want to go like this, fix my child, fix that person, or fix them. And I go like this, turn around and say, you have to fix yourself, right? So a lot of times, parents don't even know how to take care of themselves, but then they want someone else to take care of their children, and they want them to do the things because they don't have the resources. And it's scary because, you know, parents, a lot of times when I see it, it's like they have this authoritarian type of figure, like they're like up here to their children, and their children here. And I like to get the parents to say, hey, no, you don't have to be so high here. Sometimes come down to your child so that you can be in tune with them, right? And once you're in tune with that child and your brain, because the brain has a lot to do with when you're developing and you're teaching them. So if the brain is overloading, if the clit is flooded, and they see and they witnessing their mom getting beaten, or witnessing crime around them, being teased, being bullied, it's changing the brain. And so moms and dads don't really know how to deal with that. They don't know what that is. And this is why I like what you're doing now, is advocating and going out into the community and educating them, because that's where the disconnect is education. Our parents didn't have that, right? They might have had big mama, as they say, big mama and grandma and nana and things like that. But a lot of times they didn't know how to have them take care of themselves, you know? Yeah, they knew, like, go take a bath, make sure you shower, make sure you do this, and make sure you clean up your room, make sure you do these things. They knew how to do that, but they didn't know how to say, take care of your mental health, in a sense, right? So self-care is something you have to be taught. And I'm going to tell you, as a therapist, right? I had to learn to make sure that I do self care, because I know in our field a lot of times we don't even take care of ourselves. So, but I
Yeah.
make sure that I teach people that I take care of myself. So I have to make sure one day out of the week I have self care for myself, and I let people know. So if I want to talk to someone during that day, I'll talk to them. If I don't want to talk to them, I don't do it. And so I advocate and try to teach people, take one day out of a week, and that day just be for you. And just like you say, Chassie, and not just to go get your nails done, because self care is not just about taking care, the vanity part of you. What about the spiritual part of you? What about the mental part of you? What about your health and wellness, like we're talking about? Sometimes when you're just sitting there and you're sitting quiet, sometimes it's like just sitting there saying, okay, I want to be at peace with myself. I want to learn how to be with myself, instead of always having some noise around, or always I have to watch TV, pick up a book, go to the park, and really just be in tune to who you are and take care of yourself. Because I think if you do that along with mindfulness, because I find that mindfulness breathing, right? Mindfulness drawing, mindfulness eating, anything with mindfulness contributes toward the mind, the body, mind, and spirit. So self care is more than that. So I think that this disconnect is parents, and no fault to them, that they didn't have someone to teach them like what we're doing right now. And I'm hoping that the people who are listening now, that they take heed to this and teach their children and take the time to do that, because it's about, reaching back and teaching one. And then that's how you're able to make the generation get better and better and take care of themselves mentally. So the disconnect is that we're not talking to each other, and we don't have Big Mama, and we don't have someone who's there to say, don't you do that to that person. That's not fair. You don't have that. And that's part of trauma too. But I'm going to end there. But that's also, I see a part of trauma too, that there's no one there to validate somebody's feeling or to stop them from doing certain things to that child. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are really important and vital points. I know, um, being a therapist for therapists, um, that we also need safe spaces to come from, to go get help or seek help. I always say, if your therapist doesn't have a therapist or never been to therapy, don't let them be your therapist. And I stand by that, um, because we need somebody to hold space for us while we're holding space for everybody else. We always talk about not being able to pour from an empty cup, yet so many of us are suffering. Our personal lives, past trauma. Most of us didn't choose this career. This career chose most of us, right? But also making sure that we get the proper help for our past situations as well as our current. I always say, life happens to everybody, but I think it happens a little bit more to therapists. I feel like it's almost a magnet. We're almost
Well,
a
you know what?
magnet for what life has to bring. And I don't know if that's a part of our testimony, if that's a part of our journey, but it seems to be quite true, that we all need somebody to be able to make sure that we're taking care of our own, mental health, so that we can stay at our best to be able to hold space for others, for sure.
And I like that because, what you're saying is true. Because I think now you're going into the spiritual piece of it right there. When you say we didn't choose it, it chose us, because I'm telling you, it chose me, right? And following the call is tough. It
Yeah.
was tough in the beginning because, you out there advocating, you're going to, help people. And then you start to find that everybody's not as passionate as you are. And then you get into the field and you start practicing and you start meeting other clinicians. You start saying, they're not taking care of themselves. And it's like, and so you get a little bit disappointed in a sense, like saying, wow, what's going on here? Why are they in the field? So it's not always for everybody, because anybody can be a therapist, right? But I believe therapy is an art, right? And like you said, I think you have to kind of be chosen. And I remember being in graduate school. It was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning studying. And it was a particular class that you had to work on yourself, like you said. And I had been advocating, standing up, and I was just tired. And then I said to God, I said, hey, listen, look, this is too much. I'm standing fighting for people behind the scenes. They can't even see what I'm doing for them. And I said, this is too much for me. And he said, either you stick with it or you get out of it. And I was like, well, he said, either you just go ahead with it and you do it, or you get, because this is what's going to happen. And it was just a defining moment. And I said, well, you know what? This is what I want to do. I'm going to stick with it. And ever since then, I was okay with it. He said, if you're going to do it, you're going to help people, you got to be all the way in it. You can't be in it trying to, play with these people. You got to be real. And so ever since then, I was real. And I just had, and I never looked back. So
Love
you're
it.
right, Chasity. I was chosen. I was like, what you going to do?
Love it.
Are you trying to get the video up? Jackie, is that what's going on? Trying to get the video? Okay. All right. So I guess what we could do while she's doing that, we could talk about the brain a little bit, what she was saying. Uh,
I think she's back.
I think she wanted to talk about the brain. She wants to show a video about the brain, how trauma, how people witness certain situations going on as children in their lives, more specifically right now, in social media, because most of the children, right, and teenagers, they're glued to whatever platform that they like, whatever social media platform that they like, they're glued to that. And I know the brain has a lot to do with that. And I think the first one, help me out, Chastity, when they said the influence of the brain. Remember the one with the it's an old study. It was called Bobo the Clown.
That might be older than I am.
Okay. Well, it is. Well, it was old for me. It was old for me, but
Listen,
but
when I
they
tell
still.
you, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My
You
connection
good?
has been amazing. Let's just say that. Amazing. All right. So, yes, Terry, I did want to go into the video of a happy brain because, as you mentioned, the brain has a lot to do with the children being able to understand. And as we're going to see here, even every individual, really, So, I'm about to share this video. Why doesn't every home in the U.S. with the viewers? And I appreciate you, amazing leaders, continuing and
All right.
letting the show go on.
No
Solar
problem. No problem.
panels. The number one reason it's not about sunlight, weather. A very happy brain. Friends, this is the story of how Broody, a very unhappy brain, became very happy. You see, Broody struggled with fear and self-doubt. Unworthy. He didn't know what to do. Then Brody's friend suggested an idea. Together, they went to school to learn about the brain and about themselves. Let's find out what they learned. A short corpus. Your brain has trillions of junctions that magic millions of its functions. Let's learn about 3 traits of the brain that in overdrive can get you drained. First trait, your brain feels others' pain as its own. Your brain hurts just the same, in personal or beloved's pain, when someone else is hurting, about whom you care. Second trait, for your brain, imaginary is real. Your brain lights up the same nerve bundles for events real or imagined symbols. If you dream of a spider on your shin, it might cause the same dread as the real thing. Third trait, the brain can't tell physical pain from emotional hurts. The pain of a mean scorn stings the same as agony of a hurtful thorn. Broken bone and broken heart both cause the same smart. Millennia ago, the spiritual minds described in their devotions, hymns, and rhymes the same truths that the scientists of today write in theses, books, journals, and essays. What do they all say? To find inner contentment and plenitude, snug yourself in the comfort of gratitude. Your greatest joys come from passion.
Hello. Hello.
Practice of gratitude and compassion made Broody happier and stronger than ever. He defeated fear and self-doubt and then felt safe and worthy. The brains that feel safe and worthy become happy. Happy brains, when they get busy in meaningful, creative, and altruistic activities, become very happy.
Here is the secret to a happier life. Because of the way your brain operates, the pursuit of gratitude and compassion will make you happier than the pursuit of happiness.
All right. All right. Cut that beautiful video off. Now, three takeaways from this. One, the brain does not separate real from imaginary. So what we see on platforms and like social media and the news and all these different, even in our household, the brain is not distinguishing the imaginary or, oh, this is not trauma. It's still considered it, and it's impacting your brain and your physical as if you were experiencing it. Secondly, seeking information helps resolution because you're able to learn more. So, and the third takeaway, when you do good, you feel good. So, think about the police brutality and things, slavery enactments, and social media. Like I said, all the violence that we see. Like, from your perspective, Chastity, mental health, let's shed some insight into how this is impacting in adulthood.
Uh, I always like to say that the things, first of all, the things that happen to us as children or as we grew up don't have to control what happens to us in adulthood. But if we don't deal with those things or we don't find resolve in those things, I tend to see those things play out in our romantic relationships as well
Mhm.
as our parental relationships, right? The type of parent that we become, the things that we do or we don't allow our children to do, or the type of partners that we become, right? I always say
Mhm.
we, in black and brown communities more specifically, biological male children are taught that it's not it is unacceptable um, to exhibit any type of emotion other than anger, right? Anger is the most accepted type of emotion from them, and if they showed any other type of emotion growing up, in most instances, right, they get in trouble, they get punished, they get spanked, they get penalized, and then we expect for these grown men to then come on our couches and our screens and be open and honest and vulnerable and all these things and tap into these emotions that they've been taught their whole life is not appropriate for them to
Mm.
show. I always say emotionally healthy boys become emotionally healthy men. And so, again, and it goes deeper than that. I've been on many boards, helped establish many organizations, and the majority of us who are on those boards or within those organizations are also survivors of childhood sexual abuse, myself being one of them, right? And when you look at the statistics, it typically says, what is it, 1 in 4, 2 in 4, but I don't think that those statistics are specific to our
I think it's one in
community.
1 in 4
Yeah,
traumatized.
yeah, but that's not specific to the BIPOC community. If we did the statistics as it related to just our community, I guarantee it's higher than 1 in 4.
Oh yeah,
Because in all the circles I've ever been in,
I get
when
you.
we really
Yeah,
disclose it and discuss it,
yeah.
it's
Now I get
definitely
you. You're
more.
right.
It's
Right.
definitely more
It
than
depends on
than
who's
this.
doing the study, right?
It depends on who's doing the study. But you got to think about all of those things have shaped the way that we show up in our current relationships and how we even approach sex, intimacy, parenting, like all of it. And so I think the biggest thing I can say is that yes, the brain, and they say the body keeps score, right? Sometimes the physical ailments and the thing that we are physiologically feeling are not physical pain, it's emotional pain. and
Mhm.
and so I mean I could keep going and keep going, but those are like the main things that I see and how I see them play out in the people that I serve and in our communities. There is generation after generation after generation of trauma that is being covered up, swept under the rug, not addressed. And then when we don't address those things with our own children or those around us, that harm continues to happen. So.
Mm. Absolutely.
You're
100
so
agree.
you're
100% agree.
so right with that, and I agree because Dr. Bessel, what is it, Dr. Bessel Vanderkolk, I keep the score. the body keeps the score, and I use it a lot of times with people with anxiety and traumatized people, because a lot of times, going back to the brain, what you're saying, how watching the media, watching, people, things happen in your home, and trauma is about feeling safe. Am I feeling safe in this situation right now? Some stressful situations that kids could be in, they can bounce back or they're resilient, right? That's the difference between when you're being traumatized and experience like chronic, stress or some type of stress disorder. It doesn't stay with you as long, right? Eventually it goes away in a short period of time. However, hello, are we there? Oh. However, what the difference is where the trauma comes in is when it stays with you. And that's what Dr. Vessel D, what's his name?
The body keeps score guy.
Bessel van der Kolk, he talks about that in his book, and then the two differences of that. And he's saying in trauma, it stays with you and it impacts your whole life. Every part of your life, it impacts your life. And there's different levels of trauma. There's long term, short term, complex. I mean, trauma is like so many different forms of trauma that's going on. Some people may be raped and have and may not be able to bounce back. But then somebody else may, that might happen to them, and then they can bounce back from it, right? So the brain and how it's functioning and how healthy and where's your support system at that time, it determines a lot how resilient you are. So if you have a child
Absolutely.
back then who has been touched or sexually abused or physically abused, if the mom was to say, if the child comes and say, hey, this happened to me, and the mom comforts the child and say, hey, and validate the feelings and emotions, and then do something about it and say, hey, Johnny, Tom, mom, dad, whoever, don't do that to this child because that's not right. When you validate them, then they're able to bounce back more quickly. But like Chastity says, we want to put it underneath the rug. We have these secrets. Don't say anything. Whatever happens in this family stays in this family. Like, all that systemic stuff, that how dysfunction is passed from generation to generation, and that's how it's done. And people don't even realize some of the things that they're saying is what's keeping those secrets. Just like the body keep the score, we also keep the secrets in our families, and we need to start speaking up more about people, touching little, boys and girls, and families and strangers, and watch who you have around your children, because that is traumatizing to children. And so then when you grow up and you watch people on social media and you start seeing some of the things that has happened to someone else and it happens to you, you don't know what it's doing to your brain, because like you said, Jackie, they're not aware what the brain is still unconsciously talking to you. It doesn't stop. You think it's stopping talking to you. It is unconsciously, you're talking, it's talking to you. And I believe that social media, they know that, and that's it. That's how they're able to control people, keep people distracted, keep them worrying
Yeah.
about something else, opposed to your mental health. And then so if you don't have good
Right.
coping skills and you see these things happening, like you said, the brain can't tell if it's true or not, because now you done tapped into a certain part of your brain and you say, you know what, now I'm upset. And they all of a sudden they don't know why they're upset. So guess what they go do? I'm gonna go have a drink. Or now I need to, after watching that video, I need to go and beat somebody up, or I need to go and do,
Right.
or now I become depressed. Who's with that person on
Right.
the other
And
side?
another point that the commenter made about desensitizes you. We begin to think that this is normal, that this is, it's just
They
okay and it's
normalize.
normal. And
They normalize it. It's not normal. They normalize it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well,
So
I also
me and
think
Chad,
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, and I also think certain situations and incidents now, they are so frequent, that it has become normalized. I know where I'm at in Florida, there are tons of fights in schools, right? And they're videotaping them all. I mean, like, they're going on TikTok, they're on Snapchat, they're on Instagram. So it's almost like, which fight is the best, who can go viral, like all of these things. And so when we were in school, a fight was few and far in between. And nowadays, you lucky if you got a day or two where there isn't a fight. And police aren't on campus and these types of things. And there, it's not everywhere, but I'm speaking from where I'm at in Florida and some of the things that we've seen in the school systems this
It's
year.
a lot of places. And like
Yeah.
Jackie is saying, she's saying what the brain is doing with when people are watching, they're not even aware what it's doing. Like there's pixels, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you're watching videos, and if you ever watch a commercial, you watch this, or not a commercial, if you're watching a show or watching those games that they're playing, what is it called? Fortnite and all those different things, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In those pixels, it changes like this. So the brain likes it, the scene change. So these pics change, right? So in the brain, here's where the influence is and how they become addicted, right? Well, this is what I was taught, that how it become addicted, because the picture changes really fast, right? So let's say you have a one movie, part one, Jason, right? And all he does, he stab, 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 right? Jason part two, what has to happen when Jason 2 comes out? Can he just continue to stab people? What does he have to do next? He has to increase the violence, right? So he can't stab anymore. So now what he has to do, he has to chop your head off, chop your arm off. Next thing you have to do is like these car games or whatever, they have to run you over and the person is dead and they stomp on them. So it's like you have to continually want more and you become desensitized. And then the more you become desensitized, the more violent it has to become, because your brain needs that, because it's looking for that. And that's why I was going back to that Bobo the Clown. And this is a long time. It was older than me, but I remember the study. They did a Bobo the Clown doll, and they had this one kid on the. They took it on the playground and they punched it, right. And then one kid punched it, right, and then everybody else started coming in and punching Bobo the Clown, but he kept coming back up. And so the more they did it, the more he would come back up. The more they wanted, to punch him back down, and they couldn't. But it was like more people just kept coming. So that reminded me of the same thing. How the brain watching TV. These kids watching these videos, these moms giving their kids these little tablets, right? And you take that tablet away from them and you're messing with the pixels and stuff, and their brain is like, I need that because I need to be stimulated. Okay. And if I'm not stimulated, I don't like being bored because I don't know what to do with myself. Right. So that's why it's good to have the parents. I tell them all the time, yeah, take it away from them sometime. Let them earn that, because what it's doing to the brain, it is changing the brain. And lots of studies shows that trauma, stress, whatever's going in the home changes the brain. And the more support you have and the love and the help that you get, the earlier you get it, the higher the chance you have of bouncing back.
And that experiment you mentioned is the Bobo doll experiment by psychologist Albert Bandura. So
Yes.
that is real, like that really shows the influence, the power influence has on the mental health, on the mind, on the
Of
person,
kids.
you know.
Kids. Yeah.
So Chaz and I, when we were talking previously, we mentioned, she mentioned mental illness and mental wellness. So I created a nice little chart as a result of that discussion. But can you go into that a little bit, Chaz, or what you meant by
Oh, I
that?
just wanted to say there's a huge difference between mental illness and mental health, right?
Yes.
We're big proponents of mental health, right? We're always talking about mental health awareness, breaking the shame and stigma of mental health. Mental health is your everyday stressors. If somebody cut me off while I was driving down the road and I had to swerve to not hit them, it's the fact that Starbucks is closed and you can only go through the drive-through, and I need to get to work. It's the kids is getting on my nerves. My partner is having stressors at work. It's I got these deadlines for this paper or this transcript to get done for my book. It's your everyday stressors. We
Yes.
all encounter mental health. Mental illness is a bit different. It's a different set of symptomology. It's a different time frame and frequency and severity and things of that nature. And believe it or not, there's licensed therapists that don't know the difference between that, because again, it's not something that they break down in school. It's not something that they go into in school. We
You
tend
better
to go
preach.
into that when we're talking about diagnosis,
You
but we
better
don't
preach.
talk about the difference between mental health and mental illness. I'm all for mental health awareness. Obviously, I'm a mental health counselor. but also being aware of the ramifications of mental illness in our communities, and also understanding that having a mental illness does not make you quote unquote crazy. You know how we like to do in our communities, we call somebody
Uh-huh.
crazy because they have certain symptomology, but normalizing that these are things that actually occur in our communities. It occurs within our children, it occurs within our family line. You know, we don't want nothing to be wrong with our kids, we don't want nothing to be wrong with our family members, but the reality of it is sometimes there's chemical imbalances or different makeups that actually cause there to be problems and issues that can easily be
Absolutely.
treated, and a person can be able to have high levels of functioning, for
Absolutely.
everyday um, occurrences. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I like to consider another factor to mental wellness, because some people aren't all the way at the top of the ladder where they're here in this green spot where it's mental health, where you have internal balance, your mental health is uncompromised and it's a good state, control over your thoughts. So it's more you being able to manage that day-to-day stress, that typical, moment where you get that setback and you're able to become, resilient and move forward. So here's the different stages. You have the healthy state, mental health, which is a general condition of well-being and healthy balance. Then you have mental conditions. This is the part I want to bring in. This is where your emotions are a little elevated, self difficulties, social and emotional discomfort. However, you're not on that spectrum where it's like you can't control yourself. You're still able to manage. It's just things are more challenging. Things are difficult. It's hard for you to, give yourself that motivational talk sometimes. And you may be one of those people that are more dependent on others because that's that comfort that you've decided is what you need to be able to thrive and continue forward. And then we have that mental illness where there is an existing condition diagnosed medically, depression, anxiety. And, the self diagnosis and things is it's okay for you to start to seek professional help. Don't, or, I wouldn't recommend you self diagnose yourself with anxiety or depression and then run with that. I would certainly say if you have that feeling or that consideration because it just points to the signals to consult in a professional. Have that discussion with a professional. Go ahead, Chaz.
I was just going to say, and make sure it's a qualified professional. Your primary care physician is not a qualified professional. I
Yes.
actually am more
No.
qualified to make that diagnosis than them. So make sure you go to a professional that actually
Absolutely.
is trained in this space and this is their training. Most primary care
Because
professionals only take one course, as
Uh,
it relates to
and,
psychological
and
conditions. Trust me, mental health, someone who is licensed is much more credible at helping you with that. But also, um, what each of us do, because even within our realm we all have a different lane, and most people do not know that, right? Psychologists tend to do a psychological testing and assessing, and they also can very much so um, very much so confirm a diagnosis based on assessment. That is what they do. That is their realm. A psychiatrist prescribes medication. They treating the mental illness with psychopharmacology. So you don't go
like,
to a psychiatrist seeking counseling because and then complain about them giving you medications, because that's
right.
literally their realm and that's what they do.
And I
Then you
think that
have
people, not,
mental
I'm
health
glad you,
counselors, marriage and family therapists, social workers. We're the counselors, the therapists. We're helping you with decreasing the severity and frequency of the symptomology. Um, I'm just saying, if you're going to go to a professional, make sure you go to a professional that can actually help you. Your primary care physician is not the professional that has the experience to help you with mental health, mental illness, psychological symptomology. It's not an appropriate place for to
and
go. It's not appropriate for them to prescribe medications for that as well.
and
Chastity,
Terry, something you
so
mentioned when we were
wait
when
one
we were
second.
just
Wait
go
one
ahead.
second. Chastity, you are so on point. I'm so glad you brought that up because to distinguish that, people need to really know that. And I think that's what keeps people from coming to therapy. because they think that, they mix it up with going to seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist and a marriage and family therapist or a sex therapist, your primary care, physician. I'm so glad that you broke that down, because they need to know that. A lot of times I have to tell people about that. So thank you for that. I'm sorry, Jackie, go ahead.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What you had mentioned, I wanted to recant what you had mentioned during our talk, was that this chart and how it relates to, just social relationships and partner relationships. Can you please bring that insight in, because that is truly very, very, very insightful.
Yeah, when I first saw the chart, as a marriage and family therapist, the first thing I'm thinking, because it's like the whole, right? And I'm thinking, wow, this chart right here explains how people are in relationships and what part do they pick. They're dating someone. And a lot of times the people are dating people, right? And what's it, the pink? The
Yep, that
pink, right?
condition stage, that condition phase. Yeah.
And you don't even know that you're dealing with somebody who have, because, I want to back up a little bit more too. I know how you have it all conjoined together, but I think it's like it's on a continuum. You have to kind of work your way up, or work your way down into therapy, because the one that's in the pink, that's the mental condition, right? That's when I find that people come to therapy, right? When it becomes so overwhelming, when it becomes too much for them, right? And then the mental illness, yes, it's already there, but they don't even know, because then that's when they get the diagnose, or either they are diagnosed and then they're trying to self-medicate, or try really cope without taking the medication, and they fall back into that pink part. And I don't want to go see the psychologist, or I don't want to see my psychiatrist, because I just don't want to. But it gets so overwhelming that they have to come because they can't cope and deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're in a relationship with someone in any of those stages that you have, you don't even know how to deal with them, because it's like, why is this person, so moody? Well, why is this person, talking like this to me? And why is this person, switching up on me? And it's like, you don't know that when you're dating some people who have not dealt with their issues, their internal conflicts that they have, the trauma that they had, their young childhood painful experiences and stuff. And when you meet them, you don't know what you're getting, because if you don't have that eye and you can't pick up those things, you can only see the behavior, but you don't know what's behind that behavior. And so a lot of times, like Chasity was saying, it's different people you have to go to who's going to help diagnose. And not that we're just into diagnosing, and that's a
Right.
whole another thing, because that's all about insurance purposes, right? Because I really don't particularly care, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but particularly care about
Say it. Say it.
it, because I don't like to, I always tell my especially I do drug and alcohol counseling, right? And I tell the parents too, your child is not your diagnose. That person is not the diagnose. That person's a human being first, right? So you treat the human being first, and treat the person who like how a person should be treated. And I know some places where I worked, they said, read the chart. I'm not reading the person's chart. I want to get to know the person for themselves, right? Now, sure, if you have some dangers, if somebody's, they harm themselves, or they want to harm other people, yeah, you need to know that. But most of the times you don't have a lot of people like that. However, it's changing now. I'm finding I have a lot more clients who are self-harming, and I only have one who appeared might want to harm, others, but he's gotten better, right? The person's gotten better. So talking about that piece with the relationships, meeting people in that mental wellness, like, I think this is why the divorce rate is really high. I think this is why people can't have a good chance of being in really healthy relationships, because where are they going to get these skills? Who can they talk to? If you're not going to the therapist, if you're not getting some type of training, if you're not going to someone to get some type of help to help you to how to have an interpersonal relationship with someone else in a healthy way, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And this is what we're having in relationships, that people
Mm-hmm.
are just not ready to do what it takes. And I don't think it's complicated. I don't think it's hard. People say it's hard to be in a relationship. I don't think it is. It just takes you saying, I'm willing to do this. And that's what I do with my clients. Are you willing? to resolve whatever the situation is. Because if you're not willing, then I'm not going to work with you. You're not willing, or the person's not going to work with you if they're not willing to do it. You know, and if people have personality disorders, which is on your your chart, if you're dating somebody who has a personality disorder, how do you know that a person has a personality disorder? Because you can't give them medication for that, right? And most of the time, they don't want to admit that they have a problem, right? Because it's a personality disorder. So, and I'm thinking of narcissism, right? So, here's where the trauma comes again with relationships and kids and parents being undiagnosed, traumatizing their children, and then they grow up and repeat the same cycle, because a lot of times, the healthiest person in your family, right, is the one you're going to look up to. And if your mom and dad are not the healthiest person, then what's going to happen to the child? Okay. And if you don't have a
Right.
healthy attachment style to your parent, to your mom, right, that also has a lot to do with your dating style and your attachment style, right? So
Absolutely.
it's a lot when it comes to trauma. And it's not just about being traumatized, it's about the people in your lives who you trusted, who may have betrayed you, right? And most of the time it's people who are the closest to you really who could hurt you, right?
Absolutely.
So trust
Are you
is a big.
guys able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Because I was dealing with connection issues again. To the viewers, I apologize if I'm stagnated, but I'm so thankful that we are able to still continue this. So as you mentioned, when it comes to family and being able to that chaos and that conflict and all of that, that reminds me of that Kevin Watson case where he accidentally killed his sister by holding her in a chokehold because he was fearful if he let her go, she was going to attack him. And what I want to shed light on is that the family is going to experience so much trauma as a result of that. The mother,
Yes.
she's lost a son and a daughter. The younger brother, he's lost a sister as well as a brother. And then the brother who actually did not mean to kill his sister,
See the
he's
cycle.
now
See the
sitting
cycle.
he's
There's
now
the
sitting in
cycle.
jail for the rest of his life when really what happened was a manslaughter situation. And it's unfortunate that he didn't have the representation he needed, or that support, that preventative care that could have allowed the family to understand their brother a lot better and be able to work more as a unit versus be so divided where fighting each other to the point where you're choking each other out is a normal fight in your household.
Well, that was sibling rivalry, and that sibling rivalry was going on for a very long time, and it built that tension up to the point where he could not take it anymore. Now, that older sister could not trying to say what he did was
Absolutely.
right, not justifying it, but that older
Exactly right.
sister could have been taunting him and taunted him and taunted him, and he could have gotten tired of it at that time, and he probably did not mean to, but the stresses of life, and we're just coming out of
Absolutely.
COVID, right? And so we're coming out with all that stress. So being with his sister all that time, I don't know if he was with her or not, but people coming out of this COVID, right? And you're going to see a lot more situations happening because people are stressed out. We are people that need to be touched, right? We are human beings. We are sexual beings. We need to be touched. We need to be hugged. We need to have face to face. Like doing this here is fine for a short period of time, but if you and let's think of these kids too, they don't even have paper anymore to do work in classroom. They're on portals like this doing schoolwork, right? So if
Yep.
you don't have that human touch, and we're just coming out of this COVID, right? And now you don't have a lot of people talking to people. What happened? What happened? Those people are stressed. So that young man, tension was probably building up for a very long time because you don't do
Hmm.
things like that. That's not normal to do that. And he probably didn't know the strength of the tension of, if you're gonna strangle somebody, what does that say? Stabbing someone, right? It's supposed to be really personal. So can you imagine if you're strangling someone, what that means? That he had been probably dealing with a lot of stuff from his sister for a very long time. And that was probably it for him. And mom was not probably stepping in. And this is what I'm
Yep.
saying, that someone, the elders, people have to start stepping in And they have to start saying that was wrong. That was not right. No, that's not going to happen in this house. That's not going to happen. And that's not happening.
Absolutely.
And then, and I guess that would be called a village of people being able to say something to somebody else's child, to stop them. Like, give that girl back give that boy back that what's name. You had it for too long. Let him have that. You know what? Share that. Take that. You know what? Give that back to your brother. Share with your sister. You shouldn't do it. Like, they don't do that a lot anymore. I don't hear that.
Absolutely. So what I want to now lend to the community, as we discussed tonight, we discussed the brain and how the brain functions, how it how it processes trauma and the things that it sees, even imaginary in your dreams. The body is still impacted by, and the mind is still impacted by these experiences and these visuals. We also discussed, just the dynamic of how trauma affects family, how it affects marriage and relationships and sibling relationships. And now we want to lend some self-care tips. And one of the self-care tips we want to lend is seek support. I hope it pops up. My signal is acting up a little bit, but I'm still gonna go. Establish boundaries. Reflect before reaction. Meaning, reflect for a moment before you dive into that reaction. Take a moment to just think about and process what happened, what the situation is, what occurred, before we automatically react to situations. Even in our household, we should teach our children and our relatives how to reflect for a moment before you react. Because as human, we're so quick to get emotional and take things so personal that we really miss the message that was trying to be delivered throughout that entire communication dynamic, or that entire social experience, or that entire, whatever that encounter was. We miss it because we're quick to react and be emotional versus take a moment to reflect and just understand maybe another individual, and then protect your mental health. Like, protect your mental health. That's so important. So with regards to these tips, what other tips would you like to lend, Chasity and Terry?
Just understand that it's okay to not be okay. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody has it all together. Um, as I said earlier, if your therapist don't have a therapist or never seen a therapist, don't even let them be your therapist. Even therapists need therapists. So making sure you understand that it's not about being crazy, but it's also to ask for help is a coping skill. It's probably the most underused coping skill that we have. And so making sure
Mm-hmm.
that you're open and honest with yourself about what it is that you need, seek appropriate help from somebody. I always tell people, you wouldn't let a brain surgeon do your heart surgery. Your therapist should be the same. So whoever you go see for therapy should specialize in or have like an adequate amount of experience that they can actually help you through your things. We love insurance. I know people love to use their insurance, but just because a therapist takes your insurance doesn't mean that they're going to be a good fit, doesn't mean that they're going to be able to help you. So making sure that you're able to navigate what it is that you need, whether you're insurance, self-pay, or otherwise, but getting the appropriate help. So going to somebody's whose expertise matches what your problem are, or their expertise matches the solution that you need, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tassie, you're right, because a lot of people who are in therapy, right? They're in therapy for the people who are not there with them, right? You know,
Mm.
all the time that they're not. So the people who are there is because of some family member or some significant other.
Yeah, stop
And
sending your partners to therapy.
right, so they're in there for someone else, right? And so having that opportunity to find the perfect therapist for you, and I say perfect because you do have to have that match, because if you don't find a therapist that match, you're not gonna really um, get to the goals that you want. Okay, whatever that may be that you're trying to reach in your therapy session, right? And then go back to trauma. Trauma is real. And trauma is the dysfunction in most people's families that's been passed out from generation to generation to generation. And then and the families, what I like to teach them is that, here, mom, dad, if you want to stop this trauma in your family, if you want to stop this transgenerational curse in your family. If you want to talk about spiritual, the Bible, this is how you have to stop it. It stops here with this child, right? Because that's how it's able to last this long, because it keeps being passed down and it keeps being pushed underneath the rug, and everybody's turning their head this way or putting their head in the sand. And when grandpa is touching, little Susie or Bobby, they're saying, hey, don't say nothing, because they're bringing home the money and they're taking care of the house. And it's like, so you turn a blind eye, and you're sacrificing your children, for some mental gain, for some monetary gain, and then not knowing what you're doing to that child later on. And this is what you get now when you hear these stories of people saying how they were touched and how they were traumatized and how these things happened to them. And then now here they are in therapy trying to work out their childhood painful memories, right? So I say parents need to start paying more attention to what their children are saying to them. And if their children are saying, somebody's touching me, please address that. If a child is saying, I'm hurt or I'm suicidal, and that's another thing that parents tend to do, or people tend to do, is push it away. Oh, you ain't suicidal, you'll get over it, you'll get over it. No, don't push that person away. So whatever your child is saying, please address it. Please look into it, because it's something behind it if a child is coming to you, because they can't tell you exactly how it's happening, but they can tell you that, hey, this person did this, right? And look for the signs. Look for the signs that somebody's touching you. If your child was active one day, active most of the time, and your child's not active anymore, something's going on. If your child used to wear their hair, out off their face, and all of a sudden now your child hair is on the face, that's some type of sexual or physical abuse, because now they're covering up something. Like, you have to watch it, and I have to point that out to parents. So look at the signs of your child trying to tell you, may not be physically telling you. Look at the physical things that your children are saying to you. And sometimes people can't pick it up. Oh, he's just quiet, or she's just quiet, or they're just like that. No, they're quiet for a reason, because they've been silenced, because maybe they are being sexually abused, maybe they are being physically abused, and the abuser told them, you better not say nothing, or else you ain't gonna get this, or if you tell, guess what, you're gonna go live somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
That's
I'd
traumatizing.
even I'd even go a step further, and I know we're running out of time, but I'd even go a step further. Sometimes it's us, and let me explain what I mean by us. Sometimes our kids or our partners have things that they want to tell us, and our defensiveness kicks in, and we don't want to hear it. So make sure
Yeah.
that you're creating a space that's conducive for those who are within your immediate reach, that you are accessible to them, that they can come to you and tell you anything, and that you don't allow your defensiveness to get in the way of being able to hear what a person is trying to tell you about their lived experience.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly wanted to say, I was going to close with, is making your child feel safe and secure. When children don't feel safe and secure, they feel like they can't trust you. So they have to do what they think that they need to do to protect themselves. And when you see the behavior change, that's them saying, I don't trust you as a parent to take care of me. So I have to do what I think is right. And you have this full frontal brain where they make their decisions that's not fully developed, and they make these stupid mistakes and they start acting out. You think they're
Absolutely.
acting out being bad. No, they're trying to tell you something's going on. So I'm saying, parents, please pay attention to those signs. Your child acting out is not being bad. That's their way of telling you something's going on, and pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this has been a amazing live. I hope every single person viewing has got some great takeaways from this, and the value, because it's been so much shared. Thank you so much, Chastity, for your time. Thank you so much, Terry, for your time. We appreciate you. Um, Make sure you join us once a month, last Tuesday of the month. We are here to spread mental wellness information, mental health knowledge, as well as just insight from being parents and people, and as well as professionals. So thank you so much, everyone, for viewing. We appreciate all of the comments. Bring that same energy every single time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed this live chat.
Yes, I did. I did. I did. And Chassie, nice meeting you. And Jackie, thank you so much for this
You're
platform.
welcome.
Of
Same thing.
course, you are amazing. Good evening. Don't leave, hold on. Got it. Oh my goodness.